A warm welcome to all of you who are with us here this afternoon, and welcome to all the audience that's online. The theme of this year's annual meeting is collaboration in the intelligent age. But there is no intelligent age to speak about without a healthy planet. Last year was the hottest year on record, 1.54 degrees C. Ocean heat uptake at an all-time high. Nature is losing its resilience to sequester carbon. Extreme weather is increasing in frequency and intensity. Wildfires, heat stress, drought, floods, and other catastrophic natural disasters, destroying homes, destroying jobs, and destroying places we love. In a recent study, only 10% of global corporates are taking meaningful and tangible action on climate and nature. There is positive momentum, yes, but certainly not at the scale and the speed that is needed to address the unfolding environmental disaster. The focus of today's session is really around technologies, capabilities, solutions, partnerships that can enable governments and corporates to deliver a much more robust and much more timely response to the unfolding crisis in the face of all the complexities that they're facing, in the face of all the uncertainties that we're facing. And to kick off today's session, I'd like to welcome Vice President Gore. He's going to share with you a very successful collaboration across more than 100 organizations around the world, non-profits, technology companies, universities, researchers, climate experts. These individuals have been working together over the last 5 years, many on a voluntary basis, donating code, software code, time and expertise to harness the power of technology as a force for good for climate and nature. So on that note, may I welcome Vice President Gore.
Thank you, Kim Hui, and thank you for the wonderful leadership you provide here at the forum. And ladies and gentlemen, it's a great privilege to be a part of this panel that will start after this short presentation. And the first image here is a picture from the space station that illustrates how thin the atmosphere around the Earth is, the part that has the oxygen. It's blue because that's where the oxygen is, but unfortunately, that thin blue shell is also what we're using as an open sewer for all of the global warming pollution that we spew into it every single day. And it comes from a variety of sources, including agriculture and forest, land clearing and forest burning and mining and all of the different industrial operations. And it mounts up 175 million tons every day, and the accumulated amount now traps as much extra heat as would be released by 750,000 first-generation atomic bombs exploding every day on the Earth. That's insane for us to allow that to continue. By far, the largest source is from the burning of fossil fuels. You can see from this image that it really started increasing dramatically after World War II. And that notch in the upper right-hand corner is the pandemic, by the way, and the next notch down is the financial crisis of 08. 93% of this goes into the oceans, but the atmospheric temperatures are reaching record levels every single year. Last year, as Kim Hui said, was the hottest year ever measured by a lot. And that's the second year in a row it's been the hottest ever measured. The hottest 10 years have been the last 10 years. And I said most of it goes into the oceans, and it makes the hurricanes and cyclonic storms stronger, and it feeds the atmospheric rivers that are getting much, much bigger. One of them, Mr. Prime Minister, came over Spain from the heated Mediterranean at the end of October and dropped a whole year's worth of rain on Valencia in 8 hours, and the result was a catastrophe. My condolences to those who suffered such terrible losses. And 6 weeks earlier, an even larger event in Central and West Africa killed 1,000 people and destroyed hundreds of thousands of homes. In the United States, we had a huge storm. It affected my home state, but North Carolina got the brunt of it. It dropped as much water as the entire full flow of Niagara Falls over 600 days in just a couple of days. Really incredible. The same week, by the way, a similar event killed hundreds of people in Kathmandu, in Nepal. The heat is killing a lot of people. In the Hajj last summer, 1,300 people killed, and the combination of heat and humidity is making more of the earth physiologically unlivable for human beings. Relatively small areas are in the unlivable category now, but they're growing. And if we do not start reducing emissions, we could see within 50 years very heavily populated areas becoming physiologically unlivable, with a huge increase in the flow of climate migration across international borders. We're already seeing in Southwest Africa, Namibia has a huge drought, and they're killing animals, including elephants, to feed the hungry during this drought. We're seeing river basins dry up. The Amazon River system in Colombia and in Brazil, of course, is at the lowest levels ever recorded. It really is a catastrophe. And of course, the drought and the heat makes the fires more common and more prevalent. We've seen it in Australia and Greece. I could go around the world and show you these, but 2 weeks ago in Los Angeles, we had dozens of people killed. They're still searching for the bodies. 12,000 properties in Los Angeles were burned up. It's going to take years for them to recover. This was a hydroclimate whiplash. The previous 2 winters had heavy rainfalls that surged the vegetative growth, but then in March the rain stopped, and they have had hardly any rain for the last 10 months. And so that was fuel for the fires, and the Santa Ana winds, 160 kilometers per hour, fed this fire. Globally, the extreme weather events related to climate have cost $3.5 trillion over the last decade. That's an increase of almost $800 billion over the previous decade. And the increase is not linear, it's exponential. Last week, just 6 days ago, the Financial Stability Board in Basel warned of financial panics being triggered by the loss of property values. 2/3 of wealth in the world is property. The Economist back in April had this cover story warning of $25 trillion of losses in the world housing market, 15% of the total over the next 25 years. How long is it going to take us to wake up and say, we have got to get this under control? How do we control it? Well, the old saying, you can only manage what you measure, is the reason that we formed Climate Trace, which now measures exactly where all of the global warming pollution is coming from. We now measure the specific point source solution sites for 660 million, the most significant, virtually all of the global warming pollution sites in the world. We have every nation, every sector and subsector of the economy, every state and province, every county, 9,000 cities. 80% of them is the first inventory they've ever had. 25% of the pollution comes from those cities. We update this monthly starting in March. It's on the site now, but we'll have monthly updates starting in March at climatetrace.org. It's all free. You can go to the site right now. A lot of people are using it. Here's how we do it. We get data constantly from 300 satellites and 30,000 ground truthing data sources, air, sea, and land-based sensors. We feed that into these machine learning algorithms and use artificial intelligence to identify all of the polluting sites. Our coalition is 13 organizations. My partner, Gavin McCormick, heads up Watt Time and is kind of the chief operating guy of all this. And it's been a wonderful coalition because we work with 160 data contributors. Some of them are here. Will Marshall from Planet Labs. Thank you, Planet Labs. And Farnham Rahanian, for the president of Carnegie Mellon, is here. Carnegie Mellon is one of our coalition members. NASA is now using it to improve their climate models. They're getting better results at JPL from using it. The World Bank, IMF, UNDP, UNEP, a lot of nations and NGOs are using it. And we're seeing a lot of corporates begin to use it in order to reduce carbon emissions in their supply chains. Here's an example with steel. You can get steel from a blast furnace mill or an electric arc mill, and the difference in pollution may be 16 times greater per ton if it's blast furnace. If we converted the blast furnace mills to electric arc, which are more efficient and better anyway, we could reduce emissions by a huge amount. Here are two mills, both operated by Nippon Steel. They get an 88% reduction by going to electric arc furnaces. And by the way, the blast furnace mills, they have to be relined every 20 years. More than a third of them are coming up for relining in the next 5 years. Why don't we organize ourselves to convert those blast furnace mills to electric arc while they're shut down anyway? We could save an enormous amount, 21 billion tons by 2050 if we just made that change. And artificial intelligence, of course, is now increasing electricity demand. Some are using this user of AI is using climate trace data to move their operations to less carbon-intensive grids, and they've had a huge 28% reduction in their emissions just from that. But it's not all high tech. In fact, the emissions from landfills around the world is 14 times greater than all of the AI data centers, 4 times greater than all the data centers of any kind. By the way, Andrew Forrest's Minderoo Foundation is our partner in getting this landfill data. If you just cover the landfills, it's not high tech, you can reduce the emissions by 70%. That's the difference between this uncovered landfill in Nigeria and this covered landfill in Los Angeles. We're finding a lot of data that's been hidden from view in the past. Shipping, for example, and fishing, they have these automatic identification systems, but some unsavory types turn them off and try to hide. We see them, we track them. We include that data along with all the rest. We're also finding previously hidden data from the fossil fuel industry. We're seeing this is the only sector where this has been such a persistent problem. Here's what has been reported to the UN, and here's what we've actually measured. 4 times more emissions than are being reported. Only sector where that's the case. So we're also now, for the first time, able to measure the particulate pollution, which comes in this combustion process and kills 8.7 million people a year just from the burning of fossil fuels. This is Cancer Alley, an 85-mile stretch from Baton Rouge to New Orleans. Here's one of these sites. The area is color-coded to show where the majority black population is in green. See where the emissions are going? There are a lot of reasons for this, but environmental justice has to be at the heart of the energy transition and the sustainability revolution. Here's the whole of Cancer Alley. All of the polluting sites, you see these particulate emissions and coming over the majority black areas. It's horrible, really. They call this a sacrifice zone. Right in the middle of Cancer Alley is the community of Reserve, Louisiana. They have a cancer rate 50 times higher than the national average, highest cancer risk in the United States of America. The same disparities can be found in the developing world. This is South Africa. The Cape has very few particulate emissions. The coal country of Mpumalanga, the Zulu area, has a lot. We ought to be putting more renewable energy on an urgent basis in developing countries. Amazon and Apple, 2 companies that use our data, are using it to site renewable energy in places where they can offset the most emissions. But the world needs to do a better job of doing this because, for example, the single state of Florida has more solar panels than the entire continent of Africa. That's a disgrace for the global system for allocating capital, and at the same time, we're seeing 3 times as many fossil fuel pipelines under construction and proposed for construction in Africa as in all of North America. This needs to change. We're seeing also fossil fuel facilities all over with refineries and LNG terminals, extraction sites, even new coal mines. This needs to change. Now, the cost of borrowing money in places like Nigeria can be 7 times higher than the cost in wealthy countries. And the energy transition, 85% of the money has come from private capital. But most of it goes to the US, Europe, and China. And developing countries have been walled off from access to it because of the high interest rates. And you see, globally, 85% of the money has come from private capital, and that's true in the advanced countries. In Africa, only 18%. the government can't make up the difference. And that's why there's this persistent demand for more government-to-government money, which is a political challenge, to say the least. One of the many benefits, we create 3 times as many jobs in clean energy. And we now have 3 million more clean energy jobs than fossil energy jobs. So that's true in the U.S. as well, which may make it a little bit more difficult than some believe to get rid of former President Biden's Inflation Reduction Act. I hope that is the case. And it's all over the world. It's not just about the U.S., never has been. The IEA says that we have all the technology and the proven deployment models we need to cut emissions 50% in this decade. And we have line of sight to the rest. If we get to true net zero, temperatures will stop going up almost immediately, lag time of only 3 to 5 years. And if we stay at true net zero, approximately half of the anthropogenic CO2 will fall out of the atmosphere in as little as 25 to 30 years. So it's up to us to get this done. And young people around the world are demanding it. The only thing that we may lack in the view of some people is political will. But please always remember that political will is itself a renewable resource. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice President Al Gore. Can I invite you to take a seat on the panel, and I'll invite the rest of the panel to come on stage as well to join us.
Any seat?
Here.
Oh, I see.
Vice President.
Now, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Prime Minister of Spain, Pedro Sanchez. Muhammad Yunus, Chief Advisor and Interim Head of the Bangladeshi government. Andrew Forrest, Chairman and Founder of Fortescue. Catherine Kao, Co-Chair of Trina Solar. And Salil Parekh, CEO of Infosys. First, I would like to thank you, Al Gore. You've been very instrumental to what Climate Trace has achieved today.
Thank you.
I know it started off as an idea to just monitor, measure emissions from the power industry. And you had pushed the team to dream big, to look at emissions across all sectors, beyond power, to rice farms, landfills, industrial activity, everywhere. And today, we can look at emissions in all sectors, all locations, and obtain data in a comprehensive, timely, free to access, and easy to access manner. Big dreams can lead to big things. And today, we witness this dream in reality. And please join me in thanking Al Gore and the Climate Trace team. Many of them are here, many of them are not here with us, in giving them a big round of applause.
Thank you very much.
I want to start with Salil. You run Infosys, one of the largest technology services companies in the world, 300,000 employees and growing, 50 countries, a sizable footprint. But you have also been leading by example on the climate front, how to leverage technology to build some of the most efficient buildings and campuses globally. You're also working with your clients to scale technology-led solutions to tackle climate change. You have seen Al Gore's presentation. And in your view, how can a company like Infosys help to translate data like this that is freely available into actionable insights, strategy, and plans for your clients? In what ways are you also investing into capabilities that can support companies in their sustainability journeys as we move towards an intelligent age?
Thank you for having me on this panel. First, an incredible, insightful session, Vice President Gore. As always, sort of humbling to see what is happening and what hopefully we can do here. It's actually great to see that some of the points I share build upon what you've said by coincidence or design. There are 4 areas that I want to talk about building on technology and data. So first, the use of data. And I think what you've seen with climatetrace.org and everything that has been going on around the world in tracking what is going on with emissions is incredible in the way it's being used. And also the use, as Vice President Gore shared, the use of artificial intelligence to model what is going on with the impact of climate change and how potentially we can address it. So first, we're using data to track emissions, not just around the world, but in enterprises. And we see that with our clients. 3 broad focus areas here: energy intensity. That's the use of energy that we see in everyday activities. Some of this, for example, what you saw here in the oil and gas sector, where some of the self-reported versus what's actually happening is quite different. Water usage, we see a lot of that going around where water usage, especially in the way that it's efficiently driven, can be changed. Water regeneration through different methods on campuses. We've seen that on our campus. We see that with our client campuses. And then waste optimization, especially what we see in India on our campuses, but what we see across the world with our clients on how they work to it. Then we've looked at data for carbon footprint in the supply chain itself. Again, something that was referenced in the session Vice President Gore mentioned. That's very critical because there are ways we can see that large enterprises can control what's going on in carbon footprint and the suppliers by changing some of their policies. And then the way it's being tracked, the sensors that were talked about, but there's real-time insights and ways to control it much more right now than something that happens 3 and 6 months later. And then we've built software solutions, I'll talk a little bit about that, energy-efficient software solutions that can be used by large enterprises. Second is really building holistic solutions. So there's a lot of technology that is absolutely required and is useful. But what is the human usage? And there's many things we can do, for example, with behavior as we work to what each of us are doing. Many things not done knowingly. So something that we can do with change in behavior. What is the climate impact and the changes that can be driven through this holistic solution, and then the technology support that comes from it. Third, we do see resistance to change, and resistance to change is not simply because of expense or cost, it's more also because of education and sometimes not understanding the real impact or benefit that is potentially possible with the changes. We also do have an investment required, but that's not a constraint in the way we see sustainability impact that can come about. And the fourth is really the usage of technology for solutions, analytical software, the cloud around the world where we can leverage this, blockchain technologies, and a lot was discussed on artificial intelligence where machine learning algorithms can track through what the current patterns are, what the patterns will evolve to, and how even solutions can be developed, especially on weather, by using artificial intelligence. So in summary, we see a tremendous potential improvement in the transition outcomes by using data, behavior, and technology. Thank you, Gal.
Thank you. In fact, I know Infosys is investing in your employees in learning AI. Can you just share a little bit about that?
Yes, so AI has become absolutely critical for our clients, also in this domain, but in many other domains. And so we have, from our 320,000 employees, 270,000 employees have gone through AI training. And this is more in how they can use AI to benefit our clients across a variety of areas, including in financial transactions, including in risk management, and including climate change.
Excellent. Thank you very much. If I may now turn to Catherine Gao. You have recently assumed the co-chairmanship of Trina Solar. It's a global manufacturing solar technology leader, and you've been at the leading edge of powering the transformation of the energy industry. In fact, I know earlier this month, Trina Solar broke the world record for the conversion efficiency of a solar module. Higher efficiencies, lower costs, and solar costs. Solar is now one of the lowest forms of energy right now, is what Vice President Gore has mentioned. But he's also pointed out that solar deployment remains very slow, especially in emerging, developing economies where there is growing energy demand. In fact, nearly half of the continent still do not have access to energy. So the market opportunity for players like yourself is actually substantial. And what are you doing to enable more access to renewable energy? And what kinds of partnership do you need to really power this forward? How can we get that speed and scale that's needed?
Thank you very much for the question. It's such an honor to be here today, especially to share this panel with Vice President Gore, because like I was just telling Mr. Gore in the backstage, actually my journey with renewable energy started when I first watched The Inconvenient Truth, when I was a 13-year-old. And 18 years later, I'm sitting here leading one of the largest solar companies globally. I think when I first watched that movie, that's when I realized that climate change is not just an environmental crisis, it's a test for the entire human civilization. And I think being in this industry for almost 8 years now, I know for sure that this is not only an energy transition, it has to be a beginning of a new era. So I'd like to share a few points. First, I think definitely form the foundation is economics. I think for decades, we had difficulties solving the energy trilemma, the balance between being secure, affordability, and also sustainability. And I think that era is over. So through technological development, the cost for solar has dropped from 30 cents per kilowatt hour to 3 cents per kilowatt hour. And some of the projects that we do in the Middle East, for example, the energy cost is 1 cent per kilowatt hour. That is the lowest energy price in human history. So I think with that economic foundation, it really resets the entire logic for an energy transition. I think it really combines economic return with social progress. I think that's a really, really fundamental foundation to have. But with economic foundation, it's not enough. Like Mr. Gore just mentioned, why is there an imbalance in the world of how solar is implemented? I think that the reason is that a green transition, it's not simply that we install as many solar or as many wind as possible. It's a transition of the entire system. So we know that every revolution, the foundation must be a revolution in the infrastructure, right? We saw that in internet, we saw that in the first revolution for electricity. So infrastructure is really the key for implementing more renewable energies. So what we need today is not only to invest more in solar energy or wind energy, we need to invest more in grids. We need a more intelligent grid. We need a more decentralized grid. We need a more steady grid in order for all those renewable energy to be consumed. We need more storage, we need more energy storage to make renewable energy more stable and more reliable. We need to use more AI in order to balance out all those fluctuating, even more fluctuating energy supply and demand on the grid. So I think it's a question of whether we have the courage and we have the will to reform entirely, not just investing in certain parts, but a total reformation. And the third, I think I would like to share from some human notes is that I think a green transition is not only a technology story or an economic story. I think it always comes down to people. So for example, because Trina Solar, we operate in over 170 countries globally. During the energy crisis in Europe, when the energy price went up to like 10 times of normal, solar energy was able to keep the home warm in the winter and keep business running. And in many of the war zones that we're seeing, when the grids are entirely destructured, solar is able to provide power for hospital and also for refugee camps. And in some of the remote areas, even though we're not doing enough yet, where the grid is not connected, we offer off-grid solar and storage solutions. And for those people who have never used power or electricity before. So I think energy transition is not about energy. It's also human dignity, it's also security, it's also opportunities. So I think in conclusion, we have done something, but we haven't done enough. So as a private sector, as a leader in the solar industry, we would really like to work more closely with governments, with private and public entities to drive this energy transition even further.
Thank you, Catherine. Indeed, we need a holistic approach. We need the different parts of the value chain to talk to each other. We need the ecosystem of different stakeholders to work together for this, to make this ambition into reality. I want to turn to Prime Minister of Spain, Pedro Sanchez. And I want to talk about finance, because yes, the cost of solar has come down, but there is still a lack and maybe a gap in finance for infrastructure, for finance in emerging developing economies. And under your leadership, Spain is actually at the forefront of Europe's energy transition. You have an ambitious target, 80% of energy from renewable sources in 5 years, 2030. Spain is now also a hub for clean tech innovation, accounting for 20% of green hydrogen projects. Finance, policy, public-private collaboration, and it's also very timely that Spain will this year host the 4th International Conference on Financing for Development in June in Seville this year. A conference that seeks to align financing flows and policies with the transformation that Catherine has highlighted, economic, social, environmental transformation. The COPs have not had a lot of luck with financing. Last year there were 3 COPs. All 3 were not able to meet expectations where finance is concerned. What is your strategy for this year's conference? What are the focus areas, and what would success look like for you?
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for this question. And as you said, we have the honor to host the 4th International Conference on Financing for Development in the beautiful city of Seville. I think this conference will have to address important challenges that are all of them deeply interconnected. Climate change, sustainable development, poverty and inequality, and of course conflict. They all demand a response grounded in multilateralism, collaboration, and shared responsibility. You know, we are still far from meeting the Sustainable Development Goals. So I think that there's a political goal, which is that we must ensure that they remain on track. Second, Seville represents once in a decade opportunity, the last before 2030. So, I believe that finance for development is much more than an economic term. It's about domestic resources. It is about official development assistance and innovative mechanisms, debt relief, and of course, private investment and the mobilization of capital. So it is, at the end, after talking with a lot of leaders from across the world, I think it's becoming the backbone of trust in the multilateral system. So we have to act now, and I believe that Seville is our chance to do it. So our strategy is that we are fully committed to building bridges. So we need the maximum participation in the conference to agree on bold yet realistic measures and to have the necessary buy-in from all sides. So we must come together in Seville with a clear focus on our common interest and sense of responsibility.
Thank you. Thank you, Prime Minister.
Perfect.
We look forward to supporting you in your endeavor to bring together that multilateral collaboration with focus on financing for the SDGs. As you've said, it's once in a decade conference, and we should not miss this opportunity to really give this a good push. If I may turn to Andrew Forrest, founder and executive chairman of Fortescue, a global mining company. And the Prime Minister also spoke about not just debt issues for governments, public finance, but also mobilizing private capital. And you have been making significant investments into green technologies. In fact, you have committed to the Rail Zero, that your business will stop using fossil fuels by the end of this decade. Again, that's in 5 years. No carbon offsets, nor carbon capture and storage. And if you succeed, you could potentially be very transformational for the mining industry and its supply chains. How do you make the economics work? Because many people talk about the need to think about growth, the need to think about profits, jobs, business continuity, stability, and they see that tension with sustainability outcomes. But obviously, you're seeing something that many people are not yet realizing. Can you just tell us a little bit more how you've been able to mobilize, convince your shareholders, and work with your partners in this bold ambition of yours?
Yeah, thank you. I'm really delighted to be here with such esteemed company. Vice President, Prime Minister, dignitaries. So let's just acknowledge I'm an economic pragmatist. I'm a hardcore businessman. I'm an international miner. I'm very practical. I cannot do anything unless there's a hard economic basis for it. And I can say if we kicked off with this attitude, say with the COPs we've had, Prime Minister, where we have not succeeded in raising the capital despite the pledges from the international community, that is simply because, and fully understandable, there's no economic model behind it. We're going to rely on philanthropy. Philanthropy just cannot address the scale of what even one company needs. If I add up the philanthropic pledges, it's less than 500 million. We're going to spend at least $6.5 billion to decarbonise our operations. But before anyone scratches their heads and thinks, that's a lot of capital, think, well, hold the phone. They save $1 billion a year by doing that. How do we do that? We simply stop burning fossil fuel. That is what we call real zero. I do want to say that I think this word net is causing more damage to the ability of the world to finance the economic and energy transition than most fossil fuel producers combined. That word net gives you an out clause to do nothing. When you go to a bank and say, I want to borrow X billion, and we raised capital this morning, only this morning, of 9.2 billion, that's because our economic model is simple. This is the amount of money we don't spend each year, times the loan period, 10 years. That tranche of capital is now available, it's called savings, to be borrowed against. This is a financial model. We're not relying on carbon sequestration, that I can assure you, I'll switch quickly to being a scientist, that I can assure you fails consistently. We're not relying on carbon offsets or carbon credits, where professionals in this sector say 95% are going to be found to not give the carbon benefits they were purchased for. Not relying on any of that. That could be court cases, which will mean your loan, if you've lent into a company relying on carbon credits or carbon sequestration or carbon offsets, could well be in jeopardy. No, we're not relying on any of that. We're just stopping burning fossil fuel, addressing the elephant in the room. And that is fully financeable. Let me just walk you through how. When you have a very large operation with control centres around your sphere of operations around the world, and you've indicated to a workforce, in our case 25,000, that you're going to stop burning fossil fuel by the end of this decade, the workforce gets very interested. When they ask you how you're going to do that, you say, you're going to resolve it. You work out how to do it. You work out how to pull all the carbon out of our trains, out of our trucks. Our trucks are, some are taller than this room. You work out how to do it out of our fixed plant. You work out how to do it even out of making metal for green steel. And then you put a timeline on it. It's not 2050. Who's going to be around in 2050 making decisions here? We say it's going to be in your career, so we put 2030. And then, of course, the leader's saying, what happens if we don't? We'd say that's simple. At the end of 2028, a full year or two before the deadline, we're going to come through the operation centres, asked to see the energy flow part of the control panels, and if any of it's connected to fossil fuel, we switch off that operational plant. Literally send that plant and the workforce black. Now, instead of being met with despair and unionism, that was met with triumphant and challenge. We're saying to our workforce, you can do this. And out of that has come a series of inventions. For instance, the ability to charge cars in 23 seconds. The ability to put 6,000 kilowatts an hour into our trucks, so we charge our huge trucks for the next 6 hours of operation inside 30 minutes. The ability to run trains on green electricity or green ammonia, the ability to run trucks fully on green electricity, the ability to put out solar panels and wind farms and storage. Now, I just want to talk to you about storage. Once you say we're going to step away from fossil fuel, we're not going back, then the workforce and the accountants get very interested. And it comes back to what Trina Solar was saying, and many of you others have pointed out, it comes back to storage. Now, if the Prime Minister of Spain says, for instance, I need storage to run my entire grid 24/7 green, no fossil fuel, then you're not going to get that out of a battery. I'll turn to my favourite European Prime Minister and say, you will get that out of a new form of hydrogen. This is where we have an impurity in the hydrogen called oxygen, where that, as you probably have all recognised, isn't an environmental liability, is highly flammable, creates a huge amount of heat, and feeds into dual cycle power stations exactly like the power stations in Madrid. Now, we've developed this tech. We're challenging Europe to accept it from Northern Africa, and we're ready to roll with it. So all I'm saying to everyone out there, including those in the media who've challenged me all day, because everyone seems to be let out of the White House with all these ideas that, you know, the climate's suddenly going to forgive us, it's not going to matter anymore, that we can just burn as much fossil fuel as we like. And I do say that I've been challenged on this. I've just said, well, walk in my shoes. Don't throw mud from your podiums. Come down to Australia and see how we're doing it. And we will retain our title. I just want to put it out there. The company I represent is the highest performing company in shareholder returns in Australia's history. We are the lowest cost bulk producer in the world. We're not going to lose that mantle. We're going to increase our competitive edge by going fully green. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. We had the inconvenient truth, and now we have change that is inconvenient. But it's very possible, as what you've just highlighted. And I'll come back to this human dimension shortly with Vice President Al Gore. I would like to move on to Professor Yunus. This conversation that Catherine had raised earlier around the new era, the need to forge new pathways, new businesses, new ways of doing things. In fact, you won the Nobel Prize in 2006 for your pioneering work on microfinance and microcredit to alleviate poverty. Incidentally, Vice President Al Gore actually won the Nobel Peace Prize 1 year later in 2007 for his work around climate. And you have spoken at length, Professor Yunus, in your various capacities about how the current civilization is unsustainable and self-destructive. And we might, unfortunately, be the generation to witness that. Yeah. And there's a need for a new world, a new era, as what Catherine says. But how do we make this happen? We're kind of stuck, right? Can I tap on you for some advice?
Thank you. Well, thank you very much. You already said everything I was supposed to say. Thank you for introducing the subject for me. First, I want to mention that every time I hear Al Gore speaking, he creates trouble for me. I get so inspired, I have to do something about it. I don't know how to do it. I'm not an expert in renewable energy or anything. All I know how to work with the poor people and bring financial services and so on. So I keep thinking, what can I do? So one idea came, why don't I bring solar energy in the rural areas to the poor households? At that time, it was not as cheap as today, but we thought we can provide the credit from the bank, the Grameen bank that we created, and make a deal with the people. So at the moment that you are using kerosene, the lamp, because there's no electricity in the villages of Bangladesh at that time. Today we have, but at that time there was no electricity. So you are using kerosene. So I said, simply we ask the question to the family, how much money you spend on kerosene? And everybody has a ready answer because they know every month, every week, they have to spend this money. So the deal is, you give us the kerosene money and we give you electricity. That's the deal. And when the money that we collected from you is done, it's covered, it's free, it's yours. People didn't believe that such a deal can be possible. I said, try us. If you don't like it, we'll take it back. So you have nothing to lose. That was the beginning. Without knowing how the response of the families, of the poor families will do, they started trying us. They said, can they keep their words? And they liked it. And became a big nationwide business for that. We created a Grameen solar energy to bring solar energy in the poorest people. So I translated the idea that you are promoting, so how we translate in my context, and that gave us a tremendous amount of hope. Yes, it's possible. You don't have to submit to the fossil fuel every time. You say, well, how can you do it with the kerosene replacement? It's an impossible task. So we tried to redesign it in a way it makes sense to them, and it makes sense to everybody else. So that became a national program. Many other people copied it. But I ran into a problem with our government. You know it very well. So every time I do something, government has to come and attack me, condemn me, whatever I do. So I ran into a problem. Again, Al Gore comes up. He makes a big global statement. supporting me and have all the friends to sign up, join the statement in the newspapers and so on, so that I can be saved from going into jail. Because I'm always one courthouse to another courthouse. The government had 190 cases against me. And people gathered around him to make sure that the government doesn't really put me into jail. So I was about to get into jail. Something happened in Bangladesh at that time. Suddenly, young people of Bangladesh rebelled against the government and challenged the government out of nowhere. They were not planning anything. They were not preparing for that. One little thing to another little thing, it became an explosion. And suddenly, uprising of the young people and the people of Bangladesh pushed the regime collapse, and the Prime Minister flee the country. What happened? Young people looked at me, you are the one who was running the country. I said, no, not me. So instead of going to jail, I'm now running the country. So again, I get back into, again and again, this trouble. I hope this time I can do something more concrete. There's nobody to push me into jail. So young people love these ideas of creating a world that they can live, they can feel comfortable with their life. And I've been encouraging young people to see the world they want to build. I said, the civilization that we have created now is a civilization which is self-destructive. We have put everything inside that civilization, which will ultimately destroy the whole existence of human being. So we have to enter the whole civilization part. It's not about fossil fuel or something, one individual. These are important items, but the whole thing is about the way we live, the way we think. That created the world. No matter what we do now, within that framework, nobody can save the world. So I say it very loudly, clearly. I said, in order to survive and let the planet survive, we have to create a new civilization. Mm. And that civilization has to be defined right away. Whether you're doing it today or tomorrow, you have to very fast and get there. Within the framework of the present civilization, there is no escape route. So it sounds very kind of rude to say that, but that's the way I think all of us will come to the conclusion, you can't do that. So what I'm suggesting, and people kind of responding to it, saying we have to create a new civilization. The features of the new civilization will be very clear. It will be a world of 3 zeros. So I defined these 3 zeros. One is zero carbon emission. You cannot keep the carbon emission and save the planet at the same time. You have to come to that. No matter what technology you have a lot of other ideas what you can do, you have to do that. And the next zero is a zero wealth concentration. The system that we built around the world today, that we practice every day, always pushing the wealth to the top. Mm. So you see, you report to the world what kind of progress you are making, growth taking place, technology is helping us to make more money and so on. Ultimately, where does this money go to? To the top. So concentration becomes heavier and heavier. Bottom becomes emptier and emptier. Little bit sips into the bottom, but very little compared to what you got on the top. Almost 90% of the world wealth is concentrated in the hands of very few people. And it's getting worse every day. We see it, but we say that's the way world works. That's not the way world works. That's the way we made the world work. Yeah. We are the responsible people. So that's a tension I try to bring. I said, is there a solution? I said, of course there's a solution. If you look for solutions, solutions are here. So in order to do that, to make it simple for young people to understand, we try to make it easy for them by saying, let's create 3 zero clubs. 5 young people get together, create a club. What do? They discuss about the problems of environment, problems of wealth concentration, all the issues that we raise among themselves. It's easy now with the technology. You can get into the internet, you find all the things, And you say, okay, what do we do? I say, it's very simple. Don't worry about the whole world. The world is too big. Just look at yourself. The whole problem starts with us as individuals. I said, all you have to do, promise in the 3-0 Club, a commitment that you made, I will not personally contribute to global warming. I'll be free from, I'm not responsible. Others are, but I'm not. How do I contribute? So all the things that we talk about, how I contribute as global warming, I find out. And say, if I'm using fossil fuel every day, and I didn't realize that I'm contributing to the global warming. Now I'm careful. I will not use fossil fuel. That's my commitment, joining the club. I cannot do it in day one, but I'll make a schedule. When I'll do that. I said, if I'm using 7 days a day fossil fuel, this is just one item, I'll make it 6 days a week rather than 7 days. One day will be fossil fuel free. I can do that. And if I'm successful, I share with my friends in the club, I have done it. I'm now 6 days. Then somebody says, I'm on 5 days now. 2 days I don't. I said, ultimately, everybody will be trying to make it 7 days a week and celebrate. We don't use fossil fuel anymore. We've got all the alternatives. The young people know how to find the alternatives because all the speeches you're making, all the things are available. So people go there and say, declare. And they communicate with each other. One club communicates with other club. Thousands of clubs around the world grow up.
Thank you.
Even 5% of those clubs are serious about something specific happens. The reason I'm saying that root cause of all the problem is our lifestyle issue, the way we live. Unless we change our lifestyle, we cannot change the planet the way it is. So we have to go to the lifestyle. Ultimately, for these 3-0 clubs, we're saying when you make it happen, you declare that you are a 3-0 person.
Thank you, Professor Yunus.
That's it. So this is the way to do. Start this step by step, do that. If you can become a 3-0 person, we'll create a 3-0 world. As simple as that. Thank you. Thank you.
One idea a day, a step at a time, a day a week. And if you can move faster, start running. We have come to the close of the segment, but I really would like to invite the panelists, because you've heard from each other. The technology, the data is there. Economics work. Financing investments can be made possible. But we need leadership and human will. We need to also organize ourselves so that we can move in concert. What can we do to inspire more global leadership, more collaboration? This year's annual meeting, the theme is around the intelligent age. How can we harness the wisdom of our forefathers? How can we harness the wisdom from nature? How can we harness that inner wisdom within ourselves to make the right choices for our children, for ourselves, for our children, and for all future generations to come? So if I could just invite you to share your reflections before we close this panel. President El Gore, would you like to, Vice President El Gore, would you like to start first?
I was President of the Senate, so it's okay. Well, thank you. I'm inspired by this panel, and it's an honor to be a part of this panel, and thank you, Gim Hui. We are going to win this, in my opinion. The question is whether we will win it quickly enough. The crisis is getting worse faster than we are deploying solutions. But there's a famous economic law, so to speak, named after the late economist Rudy Dornbush. He said, things take longer to happen than you think they will, but then they happen faster than you thought they could. We have seen that play out in business and technology, and we have seen it in political and spiritual revolutions, the civil rights movement in my country, anti-apartheid, and you can go through a lot of the morally based movements. In all of those movements, there were times when the advocates felt despair. The antidote to climate despair is climate action. Because in those previous revolutions, when the central issue was revealed as a choice between what's right and what's wrong, then at a very deep level, the outcome became foreordained. We are very close to that tipping point in the sustainability revolution. How will we get there? We have the technology, we have the deployment models. Trina Solar has demonstrated how that can be done so effectively. We've heard Andrew Forrest has. I'm not going to go through the panel, but all of them have been so inspiring. For those who are interested in becoming advocates, please turn your attention and your energies to this. On Monday, when our forum began this week, in my country, it was also Martin Luther King Day. During one of the moments of trial and struggle in the civil rights movement, Dr. King said, "If you can't fly, run. If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. But keep going forward." That's where we are. Don't get discouraged. We are going to prevail. We must prevail. I believe that we will prevail.
Thank you. If I may go to Catherine, Salil, Andrew, and then we will close with Professor Yunus and the Prime Minister of Spain. You have the last word.
I think I like to share a sentence I always say to my team: inspire, not lead. So I think speaking about leadership, at this age, about green transformation, we should focus more on inspiration. I was inspired by Vice President Gore when I was 13-year-old. And when I was 15-year-old, I started a nonprofit organization in China focusing on education about climate change for the younger generation. And I am inspired each year that I come to Davos and hear so many people talking about energy transition and see people around the world devoting themselves into energy transition. Then I feel more powerful than ever and go back to my own work despite all the challenges that we see. So I think when people are told or commanded to do something, they might do it, but probably with minimum work. But when people are inspired, when people really are touched, they truly devote to whatever they believe in. So I think inspiration is the key in green transformation.
Thank you, Catherine. Salil?
Well, first, this has been an absolutely incredibly inspiring panel and the discussion from everyone. I'm a huge believer in technology and people, and my sense is we have everything that we need in terms of technology to make this change happen. And there's more technology being developed today that will further enhance it. So I'm an absolute optimist in that coming through. And I'm also a huge believer in people, the view that the next generation is even more keen to do this than the prior generation, that we are absolutely driven in many ways by what the people want. So with the technology and the people, my sense is this is going to happen much faster than we think it is really possible, and therefore a huge optimist in where we end up.
Thank you. Andrew?
Yeah, thank you. Look, I've drawn inspiration from all these speakers, and I just want to say that we have a large technology development centre. It's called Fortescue Zero, and I love so many parts, Dr. Yunus, of what you described. But all these speakers, I just really want to thank you for how you've helped me with your own knowledge. Just to say this, I'm totally with Vice President Gore. We are so going to win this. It is just a matter of time. The economics are overwhelmingly going in our favour. If you look at the oil and gas sector, yes, it's the largest sector which has ever existed, and yes, it has a technology curve which is typical for all industries, but it's up here, it's on its plateau. I've introduced you to technologies which are still here. We've got this part of the curve yet to go. I would not bet ever against technology, no matter where you're from. We, the people, are going to win this because we cannot afford to lose in any event. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Sometimes we ignore, we don't notice things, but it's right in front of us. And one of such things suddenly drew my attention. I've started looking at it, sports. Sports world is so big, such an excitement. Nothing thrills people like sports. They commit themselves for their dearest player and so on, celebrate them and so on. So I said, why sports should remain just an entertainment? It has so much social power in it. It brings the whole world together, people together. That's a social power. Why don't we change it? So that idea started spinning out in details, and somebody asked, can you design an Olympic as a social business? I said, why not? It should be helping people to solve their problem, just not entertainment of Olympic. Olympic is a great entertainment, not excitement, but its power can be used for changing people's life. Paris challenged me. We are going to hold the Paris Olympic 2024. This was in 2018. They invited me. Can you help us to design it like this? Address the social issues into Olympic? I said, of course we can do that. All I have to do is to think about it. So we thought about it, came out with lots of details how it can be a socially oriented thing. And finally, Olympic took place. It was designed as a social Olympic. All the details, I'm not giving into all the details, but it excited the rest of the world that yes, the sports world can, without sacrificing their fun part of it, entertainment part of it, this had another dimension to it, which is remain unutilized. And you're utilizing it for nothing because you are enjoying it already. Milan Winter Olympic is coming up. Now they are contacting us. Can you help us to do the Winter Olympic as a social Olympic? I said, why not? But in a condition, it has to be better than the Paris Olympic. I said, well, try it together. So people see the result. They got excitement. They had no idea that sports has a social dimension. Now that dimension can be explored. We just laid the first layer of it. There's so many layers you can do that. So all I'm saying, there are many things right in front of us. We never tried it in a different way. We are not sacrificing anything. We're adding something to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Yunus. And you might be delighted to know that tomorrow we do have a session called Sports for People and Planet. Please join us. Prime Minister Sanchez, you've been waiting patiently.
No, but I mean, we're running out of time, so I will be very brief. I would say that, or I would add, that in order to win this political battle, and in order to have the majority of our societies on board, the transition must be fair. So we cannot forget the social justice dimension of this transition.
Thank you. Thank you, Prime Minister. Please join me in a big round of applause for a very inspiring panel. Thank you. We have come to the last and most inspiring part of this program, which is to celebrate social entrepreneurs. If I may, we will be presenting the Schwab Foundation Awards for Social Entrepreneurship. This has been ongoing for the last 25 years. The foundation has been recognizing individuals, organizations who are harnessing the power of entrepreneurship and innovation to serve people and planet. And I would like to especially acknowledge Professor Yunus. You've been personally very involved in this, as well as Vice President Gore, to support the work of the Schwab Foundation and the social entrepreneurs. So if I could just invite you to just stay with us for the next few minutes, and I'll welcome on stage Mrs. Hilda Schwab, chairperson and co-founder of the Schwab Foundation for Social Entrepreneurship. She had the foresight to set this up 25 years ago to present the winners for 2025. Mrs. Schwab.
Thank you, Kim, and thank you to this panel for a fantastic session. Thank you very much. But here come the real doers who will try to change the world. Since 1998, when Klaus and I created the Schwab Foundation for Social Entrepreneurship, and here I want to acknowledge particularly Professor Muhammad Yunus, who was one of our first board members. It has provided a global platform for social entrepreneurs and innovators to drive systemic change and influence policy and stakeholders for transformative solutions. In partnership with the World Economic Forum, the Schwab Foundation has brought together the foremost global community of over 500 pioneering social entrepreneurs and innovators. Together, they have directly improved the lives of over 900 million people. The 2025 Schwab Foundation awardees are using innovative models to transform healthcare and education, support refugees and migrants, create livelihoods for those excluded from mainstream economies, and demonstrate real climate action hand in hand with communities. The Schwab Foundation Awards are hosted in a long-standing partnership together with the Motsepe Foundation, founded on the philosophy of Ubuntu, the African concept of giving and caring for your neighbor and your community. Our sincere thanks go to Patrice and Precious Motsepe, co-founders of the Motsepe Foundation, for their belief in this community. Now I am pleased to announce the leading social entrepreneurs and innovators of the year 2025. We recognize them in 4 categories: social entrepreneurs, founder of profit or non-profit social enterprise, pioneering systemic and impactful models addressing social inequalities and vulnerable ecosystems. They are Cecilia Corral, Care Message, USA; Mabuse Christina Kyusong, Somalife, Ghana; Musalema Wanza, Safe Motherhood Alliance, Zambia; Valmir Gabriel Ortega, Belterra Agroflorestas, Brazil; Manuel Rosenberg, Anna Care, Mexico; Alin Sara Natakalam, Lebanon; Akshay Saxena, Avanti Fellows, India; Vineet Singhal, Care Message, USA. Corporate social innovators, leaders within multinational or regional companies who drive the development of new products, services, initiatives, or business models that address societal and environmental challenges. Kaitlin Yuhong Chen, Tencent Holdings Limited, People's Republic of China; Eric Joy Peña, Northwell Health, USA; Fred Hirsch, Google Health, Singapore. Public social innovators, leaders in the public sector, in government, or in international organizations who harness the power of social innovation to create public good through policy, regulation, or public initiatives. Islam Alijai, Member of Parliament of Switzerland and founder of Tatkraft Switzerland. Trinity Wang, Agency for Enterprise Development, Minister of Planning and Investment, Vietnam. Collective social innovators, an award to recognize organizations coming together to address complex problems that cannot be tackled by individual actors, using shared knowledge, human capital, networks, and innovations to achieve a common social or environmental goal. Africa Sustainable Commodities Initiative, led by Abraham Bafou. Community Health Impact Coalition, led by Madeleine Ballard. Responsible Coalition for Resilient Communities, led by Vedaria Poonam Mutreya and Apurva Osa. Please join me in celebrating these courageous leaders and congratulate them as they join us on stage to be recognized as the social entrepreneurs and innovators of the year 2025. Please join us on stage. Don't forget your diploma.